Hey everyone, welcome into To The Point Podcast. It is a Thursday and lots to get into today. No show yesterday. Life seems to happen once a week. Just kind of gets in the way a little bit. We're back here locked and loaded on a Thursday. Got lots of thoughts. Got some thoughts on National Hockey League, of course. Some games last night. Going to preview some games this evening. Lots of NHL action tonight. Talking Thursday night football. Bills, Patriots in New England tonight. Big divisional AFC East game. Ben Murray, my good friend, who hasn't been on the show in a while, but it's always great to talk to him. Be happy to see him. He's going to join. We'll talk about it. He's a big Patriots fan. He's one of the biggest sports fans I know. I met him in university. He's proud. Loves his Columbus Blue Jackets. Loves his Michigan State Spartans. I don't know if I'll bring that up today. It's kind of a touchy subject at the moment because Michigan State is not going to be eligible for a bowl game. If you're not familiar with college football, you have to at least have 6 wins to be qualified for a bowl game. They're paying their coach over $100 million over 10 years to not make a bowl game. Might have to bring that up. He's also a Blue Jackets fan. Want to talk to him about what they should do moving forward. Lots of injuries there. Not a very good team to begin with. They weren't making the playoffs fully healthy. What should they do moving forward with Johnny Gaudreau, Zach Werenski, and some good high-quality players, but the depth not really there for Columbus, and they have no long-term answer in net. So we're going to talk about that. Preview Dolphins 49ers, my favorite game of the weekend, personally, the NFL. Cincinnati, Kansas City is spicy as well. There's some really good games this weekend. Week 13, I've talked the last couple weeks. Doing Big Money Friday is always fun. But there have been some dog games. And there's been some dog football. We got some good games this coming weekend that will tell us what we need to know about the NFL. And that's tomorrow's show, tomorrow afternoon. I'll be locked and loaded for Big Money Friday. We'll get our picks, and we're going to talk about college football championship weekend. Got some thoughts on... Actually, I want to start there before we get to hockey. Because, I appreciate everybody that listens, watches the show on YouTube or Facebook Live. Anybody that supports me, I appreciate it. I try to do a good job 4 to 5 days a week. I aim to continue to get better at this. I've been doing it for over 2 years. And I know myself that college football is not the perfect sport to talk about for the New Brunswick region. Hockey, some football, that's probably it, right? Mainly Toronto Maple Leaf talk. The rest of the NHL, we'll put up with it if you can talk about the Leafs for a long period of time. And I try to do that. I probably should do it more, but there are other shows, as I've mentioned. I try to be a different sort of show. Overdrive, Real Kipper, and Bourne, decent shows. They do a good job. They love their Leafs. They're Leaf fans. I think my analysis is better. But anyway, I realize college football is not everybody's cup of tea. But I like to think that I can sway people to at least ponder the thought of watching a game. Or at least follow along with me like you might be following the World Cup. Canada lost their final game of the group stage today to Morocco. Morocco moves on alongside Croatia. Belgium, the second-ranked team in the world, they already fired their manager. That's how quick it happens in football, as they call it across the pond. But college football is niche. Not in the States, but here in Canada, it's very niche. But here's how I kind of want to explain an issue I have. So, imagine you're in the Stanley Cup playoffs, right? 16 teams make the playoffs. 8 from the East, 8 from the West. And you play around. And the 8 teams on the outside are just sitting there. And there's a 1 versus 8 matchup. And the 8th seed loses game 1. Well, after game 1, there's a panel, there's a group of people that say, you know what, actually, they're not the best matchup. I think the 9th seed would give the number 1 seed a better run for their money stylistically. Let's swap them. That's college football. College football and the teams that make the playoffs are decided by a 13-person committee who don't watch all the games. And they ultimately decide who will be the final 4 teams that play in the college football semifinals. The winner of those 2 respective games will meet in the college football national championship game on January 9th. And these 13 people yield so much power. It's a very prized position to be in. You hold a lot of court over the sport. You have a lot of influence. And you literally hold people to the fire. You might watch a game, and there could be an undefeated team, or there could be a team with 1 loss. You like the team with 1 loss better. You put them in over the undefeated team. How does that make any sense? Well, it doesn't. So, get this, ladies and gentlemen. This weekend is championship weekend in college football. Let's just say this weekend is like a playoff game. Essentially, it is. You are playing for your conference. The Big 12, the SEC, the Big 10, etc. And the teams that did not qualify for the championship weekend to qualify for a conference championship means they weren't as good as any of these teams. Well, not really. I'll get to that in a second. But generally, the teams in these conference championship games have had great seasons, and they deserve to be here. But what sometimes happens, you play in a championship weekend game, you lose it, you could be out of the Final Four. And how does that make any sense? Well, it doesn't. It's a fact that if you play 13 games and another team plays 12, you have a higher percentage of losing a game than that opponent. There's no debating that. There isn't any conjecture there. That is just do the math. Divide it. You'll figure it out. So, in college football, TCU, Michigan, Georgia, 3 undefeated teams will play this weekend, while Alabama, Tennessee, the Ohio State sit on the sidelines because they weren't good enough to get to these conference championship games. And TCU is currently has the 3rd spot in the college football rankings. TCU this weekend will play Kansas State. They played a very close game earlier in the season. TCU is going to be the favorite. I believe I haven't looked at the lines yet because I do it the night before we do the show because I just want to take it in and really absorb. But if TCU loses on Saturday afternoon, I believe they will be out of the college football playoff. And they will be replaced by Ohio State. Now, Ohio State and TCU would have 1 loss. 1 loss. But TCU would have played 1 more game. Ohio State this weekend gets to sit on their ass, eat popcorn, have a chip and dip, do whatever the hell they want to do. Because they don't have a game to play. They're literally waiting for the committee. They will hear word that they will either be in the Final Four on Sunday morning or they will be in a bowl game against Alabama in a couple weeks. That's what they're waiting for. But it makes no sense to me that a team that plays 1 more game than the other gets penalized. You are penalized for being better in your conference than the team below you in their other respective conference. Doesn't make any sense. The NFL, you all play 17 games. If you're not good enough to make the playoffs, you're not good enough to make the playoffs. It's on an even playing field. NHL, you play 82. Baseball, 162. Basketball, 82. If you're not good enough to get in, get the hell out of here. But to me, you think, okay, you're guaranteed to play 12, but you might play 13 games. But if you play a 13th game, we're going to hurt you for it. That makes no sense. That logic is flawed. There's something wrong with that pitcher. For TCU, for Georgia, for Michigan, they should feel comfortable and they should be set because they have earned this. Now, this Final Four college football setup has already diluted conference championship weekend. Quite honestly, the games this weekend aren't that compelling. Purdue, a 4-loss team in the Big Ten, has made the conference championship game. Why? Because their side of their conference stinks. Wisconsin stinks, just hired a new coach. Iowa, who always stinks. Kirk Ferentz and that god-awful team they got there. Go through the Big Ten East, so the Big Ten West, and look at what's available to you. Not much. Big Ten East, you have Penn State, a 2-loss team who's ranked 7th. You got Ohio State that's 5th and Michigan that's 4th. And yet only one of those teams is playing this weekend. In a perfect world, Michigan would play Ohio State again, but that's not the way it works. The system needs to change. Thankfully, it's expanding to 12 teams. And games will be important this weekend. Even last weekend's games would have been more important. Penn State would be playing for something real, not hoping they get a nice bowl game for their great season with James Franklin. I just had to go through this process because it makes no sense that you play an extra game and you are penalized. Maybe TCU won't be jumped by Ohio State, but I have a hard time believing that. The committee loves blue bloods. Every sport does. In the NHL, Gary Bettman loves the Arizona Coyotes, don't get me wrong. They could do anything. They could hire terrorists to work for the Arizona Coyotes. He would keep that team in the desert. Bin Laden could resurrect and he would still keep that team there because it's his baby, because he doesn't want to admit fault. He already had to do it once with Atlanta. He doesn't want to do it again out there in the desert with the beautiful weather. I get it. But Gary Bettman's bread is buttered when Toronto is competitive, when the New York Rangers are good, when the Canadian teams are generally good, Pittsburgh, Washington are relevant. When the Final Four is Nashville, Arizona, Columbus, New Jersey, he's not ecstatic about that. Not many people are. Those aren't teams that are sexy. There's no big names. There's nothing to jump off the page. Now, true hockey fans will watch any sport. Hear that about the Maritimes. We're so passionate about hockey down here. Be curious to see that with the World Juniors. Do we as Maritimers go to games in Moncton just because, even though Canada's not playing? We should. As an avid sports fan myself, I went to Edmonton this summer to the World Junior Hockey Championships, and I watched games in empty barns that did not feature Canada. Now, I'm a big sports fan. I don't need it to be Canada. But are we truly that big of sports fans? Tickets are well priced. You have great hockey action just a foot away from you. Just a thought. But this weekend, college football. We will gamble on it. We will talk about it. But this could be a better system. The games could be better this weekend. Clemson and North Carolina is virtually an irrelevant game. Playing for the ACC title, neither team, they're playing for nothing. Purdue should not be playing this weekend. They're no good. LSU has 3 losses. They blew it last week to Texas A&M. Now their matchup against Georgia is irrelevant for them. They're not making the college football playoff with 3 losses. They're going to have 4 after this weekend. quite frankly, the Tulane UCF matchup is just as compelling as anything else. Some really athletic quarterbacks. Should be a fun game. Might check it out. But I'm keeping my eye on the USC game tomorrow night when they play Utah and the TCU game. Because you have Ohio State and Alabama sitting there. They want those teams in so damn badly. They just need to find a good excuse to get them in. I don't think they have one. But who knows? That's my rant for the day, and just kind of an explanation on what college football is. Love the sport. The people that make the rules, kind of like everything else in life, seem to screw it up. Seem to not have a good, steady structure in place. What can you do? Watch the sport and continue to complain. To the ice. Last night, multiple NHL games that were interesting. Bounced around. Great comeback from Detroit late in that game against Buffalo. Buffalo ultimately pulls it out as they get 2 points. Watched the Oilers game last night late into the night playing the Chicago Blackhawks. Well, let's start with the two early games. Leafs, San Jose. Last night's game, the Maple Leafs won 2-1 against San Jose. I'm not giving anybody that big of a prop for beating San Jose. Is a brutal hockey team. Let's be frank here. Who I will give credit to, is Ilya Samsonov for his performance and a very lackluster defensive effort from the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, this was bound to happen. Toronto's been playing great defensive hockey for a week and a half. This happens to every team. This is by no means a criticism on the Leafs. They just didn't play a great defensive game last night. It happens. It happens to every team. And quite honestly, it happens to teams every other night. Happened to Tampa against Boston on Tuesday night. They didn't play a great defensive game. It cost them. Toronto had an off night defensively. They still got the 2 points. That's how you should look at the game. But here's my bigger thing. Samsonov hasn't played in 3 weeks. He came in. I thought he was very good last night. Now, the Leafs were the better team when it comes to puck possession. I didn't think they did a very good job getting to the middle of the ice, getting high-quality scoring chances. But in saying that, they turned the puck over a lot. They gave up a lot of odd man rushes, and Samsonov was in perfect position, and he made the saves he had to. Early in the game, first shift for Nick Robertson. And I'm not going to have a Nick Robertson discussion, big one today, because again, I don't care. He's not worth talking about for longer. There's other shows that will do that. He comes out like a bat out of hell, just he comes like a bull right out of the cage. And he's trying to get a shot off, can't get it. Then it goes up, he loses the puck, swinging for the fences. Before you know it's a 2-on-1. So it's a breakaway down the ice. Samsonov made a big save to keep the game scoreless. He was just in really good position. He made good saves, and he looked steady last night. And for the Maple Leafs, Samsonov was playing fantastic prior to his injury. Matt Murray has played extremely well since his return from injury. And other than last night, the Toronto Maple Leafs have been one of the best defensive teams in hockey, period. That bodes for success. That looks like a team that's going to play extremely well and win a whole lot of games. And it's a formula, minus last night, that will win you playoff games. So, great, really good stuff there. Mark Giordano, I have to give him props. I'm watching the game last night, flipping back between Ottawa, Rangers, and Toronto, San Jose. I didn't think Mark Giordano would be playing this well. I really have had my doubts, and I'm still not backing off the opinion that he's going to be long in the tooth here before you know it. because I think I'll be right about that. I'm not going to back off that take. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll revisit it. But so far this season, Mark Giordano's played fantastic. He's playing like a warrior. He's blocking every shot. He's skating back. He's in perfect position. And Justin Hall had a tough night last night. Turned the puck over a ton. Couldn't get the puck out of his zone. He didn't play well. When the puck was on his stick, it was tough. He had an off night. Gio covered up for him. Gio was great in really big moments for this team, and he deserves credit for that. I thought he was fantastic, and he's been fantastic over the first 23 games of the season. So credit to him, because I didn't see it coming. I like him. I like his game a lot. And I think you're looking at the team itself and the defense. Mac Hollowell is getting praise from Austin Matthews. That's good leadership on Matthews' part to prop up a player that hasn't really got any experience yet. He gets an assist on the Matthews goal, scores another goal 5-on-5. That's another positive thing for the Maple Leafs. So I think the D are just playing by committee. They're trying to keep the game simple. The forwards are helping. And I'm sure Leaf fans were watching last night, and I don't know if you were or not, but I'm watching the game itself, and I thought the best player on the ice, either team last night, was Timo Meier. Timo Meier was all over the puck last night. He had great scoring opportunities, and he truly is one of the most underrated players in the league. There's not much he doesn't do well. That's what I'd say about Timo Meier. He's all over the puck. He gets great scoring opportunities. I think he's a really smart player. Timo Meier is a restricted free agent after this season. And Seamus and I talked about earlier in the week what the Leafs should do come trade deadline time and if their D are set yet. And I still think that's a work in progress, and that's a question that remains unanswered. But how do you not watch San Jose, a team that stinks? As I've mentioned before the season started, I thought they'd be one of the worst teams in the NHL, if not the worst. And look at Meier and think, how would he fit with the Leafs? That was my initial thought. How does he gel with this team? Could he play in a wing? I think he'd be perfect in their top six. And, you hear about Erik Karlsson, and that'd be the trade to make. No. Whoever acquires Erik Karlsson, you are getting... It's like you're getting a Christmas present, right? And you shake it. Do this as a kid, you get a Christmas present. You think it's awesome. You think you know what it is. You're guessing, you're shaking it. And you think you got it pegged. You wanted in my case, most Christmases as a youngster, you wanted the WWE action figure. You wanted the new Triple H, or you wanted the John Cena, and you're shaking, oh my God, there's the plastic. I can go play wrestlers for the next 4 hours upstairs. But you open it up, it's a pair of socks. And as a 24-year-old, I appreciate a pair of socks for Christmas. It's a good gift. Socks, underwear, all solid. I won't complain about it. I don't have to buy it. Saves me money there. It's a good gift. When you're 7, clothes are a shitty gift. Whenever I got clothes as a gift, I didn't want it. I was like, great, clothes. What am I going to do with clothes? Erik Karlsson is like getting clothes as a 7-year-old in Christmas. You think, you shake it, you think it's an action figure. You open it up, it's a button-up shirt that's got an ugly color, and you look like Curious George. You want the action figure. And you look at it, and you're like, oh my God, this is what it is. And then you look, and then you open it more, and it's not what it seems. Erik Karlsson's playing great this season. You banking on him being great the next 4? I'm not. A team will make that bet, and they'll lose. They'll lose. Because I haven't forgotten his last 3 years. I haven't. And somebody will take a risk. But if I'm the Leafs, Timo Meier is the piece that would excite me way more than Erik Karlsson from the San Jose Sharks I'm watching last night. That's going to cost you a lot. But maybe it's the year for the Maple Leafs that you take a swing when it comes to a trade. We've seen bit piece come in, bit piece come out, make a deal for this depth player, and nobody that's of consequence. Jake Muzzin be the biggest deal. His career's over, so that's done. How about you trade for a guy that can have real impact as a top 6 player? You get another top 6 player, that means another top 6 player can drop. Because Calle Jarnkrok, newsflash, is not a top 6 player. He also gets hurt last night, so you lose more depth. Meaning, Nick Robertson, if you're going to do anything as an NHL player, do it now, or you'll be on a bus with the Marlies before you know it. But if I'm the Leafs, Timo Meier is on my short list of players that I would love to acquire. You got a first-round pick. You got Matthew Nyes, he was a high second. You got Nick Robertson. You always say he's a high-end prospect. See if any team wants him. You can use him as leverage. You don't have a whole lot of prospects, but you have enough to swing a trade. You have enough to make it interesting. You have a young Finnish defenseman that I think teams would be interested in. San Jose might want Topi Niemela. They got an old defense core. Vlasic is still there. Karlsson is still there. He's not a spring chicken. Matt Benning is on that defense core. He's in his 30s. What if you can get a defenseman to be your future? Be part of the solution in San Jose. Topi Niemela, first round pick, maybe a second for Timo Meier. If San Jose is going to lose him for nothing, they will make a trade with somebody. And if your prospect, who I did watch at the World Juniors this past summer, and has been phenomenal at both World Juniors that he's played in, he's also got good stats playing in the Finnish Elite League, I think that would be intriguing to teams. It's a big name. It's not out of the realm of possibility. It might seem far-fetched, but if you're aggressive enough, if you scour your cupboards enough, and if this is the biggest thing, if you want the player badly enough, you'll find a fucking way. You'll find a way. There's deals you don't expect to see, they happen. Blake Coleman at Tampa. Do you think that was an easy deal to put together? No, but they did it. David Savard, do you think that was an easy deal to put together? No, but they made it happen. Teams that win just find a way. It's not about making an excuse. It's about finding a solution to your problem. Period. Matthews looks good, looks better, playing better consistently. A guy that is really improved his game this year on both ends is a guy, I got to give him credit, Bill Nylander. I thought he was really good again last night. My twin, I've been told by many people I kind of look like Bill Nylander. I'll take that. I think he's a good-looking cat. He's got good hair. We got that in common, I guess. But he is constantly on pucks. He's always in his own zone. He's stealing pucks away from guys 24/7. Bill Nylander is not going to be a physical player. But I look at a guy like Bill Nylander, and that's who Nick Robertson should be watching. You are not a physical guy. But William Nylander finds a way to have an impact. Yes, he's scoring goals this season, but you're seeing him last night in his own zone. Stealing pucks, quick exits, hounding on pucks, using your speed. You can have an impact doing that. That'll keep you in the lineup. That'll keep you relevant. You work like that, it also helps you on the score sheet because Bill Nylander's off to a rip-roaring start. And if Mitch Marner wasn't playing so well, William Nylander would be getting a lot of the praise for this team's turnaround. So credit to him because I think he's playing a hell of a lot better. And, he's not the easiest guy to root for normally because he doesn't play that hard, but he looks good. I see we got on the line a guy we haven't talked to in a minute. Be good to chat with him. I'm sure he's looking good. I see. We'll bring him in here. Back on the pod, rocking the retro Jays hat. It is Ben Murray. Benny, good to see you. How are you?
Doing well, thanks. Appreciate you having me back on and accommodating my Eastern Standard time zone difference. Appreciate it.
I like the hat. Where'd you find that?
This is found it in my dad's closet. He bought it. It's a funny story. He doesn't wear these style of hats. Like he's more of a dad cap kind of guy. And I remember him buying it, and both me and my brother looked at him like, "There's no chance you ever wear that." So sure
Right.
enough, this thing sat in his closet for a good 5-6 years before I'm like, I'm taking that, thanks, Dad. So it's an old one, but it's thanks to my dad not using it, it's still in decent shape.
I saw that you were in Michigan, I believe, a couple weeks ago, right? Did you go to a game?
I finally paid a visit to the most overrated stadium in all of North American sports, and it lived up to that. I tried to manifest the Illinois win. I thought I had it. That stadium was quite quiet for a while in there, and I thought Illinois was gonna get it done. They're about one first down away from pulling it off, but I'm I'm terrified of a national championship going to Ann Arbor, which is not good. Not good.
Would you see the news today that Blake Corum is done for the season?
I did not see that, no, with the knee. So, I mean, I never want to cheer for injury, but that certainly that doesn't help them out at all. And I saw the news of their star defensive lineman who is faced with the felony. I saw that. So,
Yeah.
plus,
So, as a Michigan State guy, Michigan or Ohio State, who do you hate more?
oh, it's Michigan. It's not even close. Like I was watching last week, just cheering my absolute balls off for Ohio State and getting pissed off, as I'm sure a lot of all Ohio State fans were, at some of the play calling and decision making from Ryan Day and some cowardly punts and all that. I was just as mad as I'm sure most Ohio State fans were.
I was talking about this to start the show. I hate the conference championship format. Like Michigan, Purdue this weekend. Like no four loss team should be in a conference championship game, and a lot of them feel more meaningless this year, Benny, than years before. Do you get the same kind of feeling?
Oh, for sure. It's brutal. It's not fair to the teams like USC, TCU, Michigan, Georgia. Why do they have to play this game when Alabama and Ohio State are sitting on the sidelines? Like only bad things can come of this game for those four teams that are currently in the playoffs. So why are they going to get penalized for being the best in their conference when those other teams are sitting on the sideline waiting to maybe get a shot at the national or the college football playoffs? So I agree. I think it's dumb. And yeah, the Big Ten West, I mean, I don't even remember the last time they won it. It's been a while. I know Wisconsin and Iowa, they had years in the past where they're pretty good teams, but it's a joke. Like you said, Purdue making it with 4 losses. Like it shouldn't happen and doesn't seem fair to a lot of other schools.
How confident are you that if TCU loses this weekend, they will remain ahead of Ohio State?
Not very. There's one thing we've seen in the past from that committee. It's they like their I don't know if blue bloods is the right term in football, but they like their big money schools like the Ohio States and the Alabamas. And I mean TCU is, I guess, they're a decent market, but they're not on the same stratosphere as those the Ohio States and the Alabama. So I think they deserve it. And I really hope, even if they do lose, they get a shot. Not saying I think they have much of a chance in that first matchup, no matter if it's Michigan or Georgia that they would end up playing. But I'd
Right.
like to see it. I always I mean, we saw the announcement of the 12-team playoff, right? Like, it's nice to see new faces in there, even if, I mean, they get smoked. But whatever. That's sort of just how it goes at the end of the day.
Michigan State not bowl eligible yeah, you just gave that coach all that money. I mean, it's got to be frustrating as a fan in a weak Big Ten.
Yeah, it was a very disappointing season. Won't sugarcoat it at all. Both on and off the field, obviously, with some of those incidents there that you can't
Yeah.
really defend a whole lot, but just on the field. And I know, like coming into the year, I think like myself and a lot of Michigan State fans were realistic that we weren't going to repeat last year. I think a lot of people knew we sort of overachieved last year, and Kenneth Walker hid a lot of our sort of
Mm.
downfalls, like a terrible defense and a pretty bad offensive line. So I think we knew there was going to be some regression, but to not make a bowl game, like that's very disappointing. And I mean, the defense, like I mentioned last year, is terrible. The one thing coming into this year that we felt confident in is that the defense couldn't get any worse, but it was brutal, especially the first half of the year. Like you could have had you or I throwing for 300 yards against that secondary. It was absolutely painful, and the offensive line pretty much just as bad. So they just weren't a very good team. The second half of the year, they played a little better, and they should have. I mean, the terrible, terrible loss against Indiana, where the quarterback had like 2 completions the entire game, and we somehow lost the game. So that's a lot of inexcusable losses. The coaching staff, like you mentioned, Big Mel, got that big payday, and geez, it's I'm still on board Mel Tucker. I think a lot of people forget that the first sort of 2-3 years of a new coach in college, they're not using their own guys and their own recruits. So I think you got to give them, well, at least the 4 or 5 years to really make a proper judgment on him. Let him get his guys in, the guys that he recruited, he wanted on the team, and see how that works out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So we'll see. I think the jury's still out on Mel Tucker, though.
Yeah, I mean, with NIL now, you can turn it around quick. You know, if you got enough money to throw at people. And in particular, I don't think JJ McCarthy's that good of a quarterback. But I mean, if you, like you said, if you get a good offensive line in the Big Ten with the conditions, you can win games pretty quickly. Because, you know, I don't think Michigan's more talented than Ohio State, but they beat them, you know, easily on Saturday. Coach Prime, Deion Sanders. Do you think he leaves Jackson State after their game on Saturday?
I think he does. I know he wants to make that step into D1, but I think it's now just a question of, does he want that like premier program? I don't know if one of the premier programs would be willing to sort of take. I feel like he's still a bit of a risky take. I know he's done an awesome job at Jackson State. They've been a powerhouse, and I can't think of the conference, SWAC or MEAC or
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
swag, yeah.
So like they've been a powerhouse. So uh, I wouldn't be surprised if he takes the shot. I'd probably lean toward Cincinnati just because of the program
Mhm.
they've built the past couple of years. They've shown, and they're moving to the Big 12. Yeah, Big 12, right? So he'll be in a Power 5 conference, and I think it would be exciting and good for college football to see him sort of make that jump into the the Power 5 or wherever he ends up.
Yeah, I think if he takes that Cincinnati job, he could have another big one within like 2 years. You know,
Yeah,
because they've been getting good players already. They're in a fairly easy conference. Even if they go to the Big 12, I think they'll be competitive. So I would not take. I think the Colorado jobs. That's a scare. I wouldn't want that job. Like
yeah, I know.
that's a tough program to try to turn around. And USF. You might as well stay at Jackson State for me anyway. You know, like there's not a whole lot of difference there. But I think his recruiting pitch. I think Auburn's going to regret giving that job to Hugh Freeze and having Dion sitting there. I think it would have helped that team in the SEC to kind of have that kind of brand name to recruit kids to come play for him at Auburn.
Yeah, but if there's one thing Prime has, it's right. He has that swagger, right? And recruiting down in the South, they're like you walk
Mm.
into a DB, a 5-star defensive back's living room. I mean, how can there's no better sell than, hey, I'm Deion Sanders, I'm the best arguably defensive back of all time, come learn from me and you'll be in the NFL in 3 years. I mean, it's tough to really beat that pitch. So I think Auburn, yeah, the Hugh Freeze hiring was like bizarre and weird, but anyways, yeah, I think you're right with Cincinnati being sort of a stepping stone. I mean, we saw it with Luke Fickell there.
Hmm.
Wisconsin, I don't know if they're top premier program, but he did take that sort of jump into bigger conference, bigger market. So I think you're bang on. Cincinnati would be a good opportunity for Deion to go in for whether it's 2, 3, 4 years and show that he can do it at the next level. And if he continues to do it, I think it's only a matter of time before one of those major markets takes a real shot on him.
Caleb Williams, Lock, Heisman.
I think so at this point, especially with the Blake Corum injury.
Hmm.
I just don't see who else would overtake him based on what Caleb Williams done in the turnaround at USC that they've done. They've had a pretty remarkable season compared to the last couple of years down there.
Yeah, he's so fun to watch. I find like he's got some Mahomes in him for sure. Like he can make a lot of stuff happen out of nowhere. And I think they got a good team at USC, but I don't think they're that good. And they're still, they're the fourth ranked team in the country. Do you think they'll beat Utah tomorrow night and avenge their only loss?
I hope so because, like you said, at least if there's one thing they got going for them, it's they're fun to watch, especially that offense. They got some weapons out at receiver, and decent running backs too. But watching Caleb Williams is a ton of fun. So if anything, we can see him put up some points, whoever they're playing in the playoff. But Utah, it won't be easy. Utah is obviously a good program. They had a lot of people had Utah making the playoff like in the preseason, so they're still a really good team. Um, I just hope USC pulls it off because college football is better when they're making noise and when they're playing in big ball games. It's fun to see the Trojan uniforms. There's just something about those in like a big game where it just sort of looks right, brings you back to like the Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush
Mhm.
days. So I hope they win.
How was the tailgate experience at the Michigan game?
It was fun. It was freezing. Like the game was absolutely frigid. And shout out the student section was like half empty. I guess those Wolverines can't handle a little minus temperatures, but
Oh,
it was tough scenes down there in Ann Arbor, the student section. But no, the tailgate was fun. It's definitely a different breed down there in the States. I mean, they do it right. I've never been to like an SEC tailgate or anything to compare it to, but I mean, yeah, just ginormous parking lots, cornhole everywhere you look, uh, drinks flying around. So it was a good time. It was a good time. Other than the cold, like I said, it was pretty freezing.
did you see anybody with a setup that had like a TV in the back of their truck?
Yeah, yeah, you saw a couple of those, and they got like the grills, grilling up some glizzies, getting that going, and yeah, at like 10 a.m. So it's awesome down there. They definitely know what they're doing. They've been there before.
Since you got the Jays hat on, what do you make of the Jays hiring Donnie Baseball, Don Mattingly, as their new bench coach?
Yeah, that kind of came out of nowhere to me. Like I saw the rumor like a couple days ago, and then it was done pretty quick. So I mean, I don't hate it. I haven't read an awful lot on it. I don't. Does he have prior relationships with John Schneider or something? Like I haven't read too much into it. Um, but I mean, I don't hate it. The guy is bring him back to his prime, big lefty bat. I wouldn't mind him in the lineup more than sitting on the bench. But yeah, I mean, so I don't mind it. Like I said, I haven't done a whole lot of reading into it or exactly the reasons why they brought him in, but yeah, I don't mind it at all, especially as a bench coach role.
I'm surprised Schneider would want him there just because, Mattingly's experience as a manager. It's pretty, things don't go well to start. It's easy to look at Donnie and say, Schneider, see you later.
Yeah, it's a good point. You feel you always sort of looking over your shoulder and you see that big within just the name, the presence alone, that's something
Mhm.
like, yeah, oh, we have a guy sitting waiting for the role whenever that time may come. So you're kind of right in that. I wonder how much sway Schneider actually had in the decision. I'm not sure, but it's certainly I can see the who maybe the Sid Sixeros of the world after like 5 games saying, "Oh, it's time for Mattingly." So we'll see.
He's he's a really weird Toronto sports fan because I'm not sure if he's rooting them to succeed or fail. I can't figure it out.
I have no idea. I'm not a huge fan by any means, but
Me
you're so
either.
right. Sometimes you see his tweets and you're like, okay, like he's happy they won, and then after a big loss, he's like something like "I told you so" or something like you're bang on. I have no idea if he's actually a fan of the team or not.
What do you want to see the Jays do this offseason? Like if it was a Ben Murray checklist, what's top 2, 3 things you want to see them accomplish?
Like they need uh starting pitching depth, that fourth, fifth guy. We saw it cost them last year, and Kikuchi actually looked somewhat good out of the pen, as weird as that sounds and as awful as he was for most
Yeah.
of the year. Like at the end of the year, he looked kind of all right. And it's brutal that you're paying him that much to be like a
Yeah.
bullpen guy, like terrible. And maybe they probably try him as a starter again. We'll see if it works. But another fourth, fifth guy to fill that role would be huge. And the lefty like power bat would be awesome. I don't know where it's coming from. A lot of Cody Bellinger. I don't know how much that
Yeah, I don't
really
like
moves
that.
the needle. He's been terrible the past couple of years. I know you still think, well, he had that one MVP year where he was an absolute stud. So that's kind of why people are still a little hard-eyed over him, but it doesn't move the needle that much. Brandon Nemo, I think he's a really good player, but the contracts I've seen that he's probably going to get, like it seems like an awful lot of money for a guy turning 30 soon, and he's been good for a couple years, but it's not like he's done it for a very extended amount of time. So I'd be a little nervous handing him over like 130 mil, especially when you have George Springer over there, who when healthy is great, but it feels like he's not healthy half of the time. So I'm not sure where the power lefty bat exactly comes from, but I think those are the two check marks that I would love to see, that depth pitcher and the, I mean, how did I not touch on the bullpen too? A swing and miss guy wouldn't hurt the bullpen
Mm,
by any means. I know they got the guy in the Teoscar trade, but I don't know. Like I haven't watched him pitch enough. I don't have a good enough opinion on him, but I just find it so weird. And I know Seattle's bullpen was really good, but he only pitched 1 inning in the playoffs, which I found very odd because
yeah.
everybody was talking about how good, and his numbers, like they were awesome. Like you can't deny that. But it's like, why is this guy only pitching 1 inning in the playoffs when the games mattered? So I found that a bit odd, but hopefully he turns out to be a good arm.
Do you want Bo to move to second base?
That would be nice. I would love a shortstop where every time a ground ball is hit, you don't have to like hold your breath and just hope that a routine play gets made. Bo's so weird, and it almost feels like he makes the tough plays look easier than the routine plays, which like obviously it shouldn't be like that. But I don't know whether it's like an ego thing with him, or I know it'd be like be tough to be told like you're not good enough to play short, move to second, but I think at some point you have to understand what's best for the team, and clearly he hasn't shown yet that he is good enough defensively to be an everyday shortstop, even though that's sort of what he is.
Yeah, I think Vladdy covered up a lot of his plays this year. Like Vladdy had to stretch a lot, seemingly every game. Like he deserved to win the Gold Glove because he was awesome at first base. He made some really really good plays, and I totally agree with you. And Bogarts might be too expensive for the Blue Jays with the contracts they're gonna have to give out. But he's a really good defensive shortstop, and I'm sure it would at least pique their interest to take a look at what kind of contract he'd be looking for.
Yeah, how can you not? He's good hitter, but like you said, defensively he's awesome. So I think that's the biggest upgrade and something you're looking for there. The bats, like I think they still have enough bats in the lineup that you don't necessarily need the offensive first shortstop.
Mm-hmm.
That would be nice, obviously, to have a guy that can produce like Bogarts. Um, but yeah, just consistent defense at shortstop would certainly be helpful for Vladdy's groins, I guess you could say.
Aaron Judge go back to the Yankees, you think?
I would lean yes, but I don't know. It's weird. It feels almost like the longer it goes, like the less and less likely it happens. I don't know. I've heard San Fran's obviously making that big pitch, and other teams have checked in, but to me, it would be so weird to see him leave. It just feels like he's meant to be in those pinstripes for his career. He feels like one of those Yankee lifers that they've had so many of them. But who knows? I do think like every day that goes by, it's more and more likely that maybe he does end up leaving. And as a Jays fan, obviously, I would not mind it one bit if he took off to San Francisco. That would be very nice.
Would you? I wouldn't give him like an 8-year deal. 8 to 10 years to me is crazy for a guy that's going to be 31. He just won the MVP. I get it. I don't think he'll ever have that good of a season again. So I think you're buying low, if you will, for just his production. It would scare the hell out of me to sign him for 400 million, because I think his numbers will only go down. It'll be an Albert Pujols type deal.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to bring up. 100%. We've seen with baseball so many times that these guys, they just don't age very well at all. And you get them in their prime, they're awesome, but injuries start taking over, especially with a guy like of Judge's size. Like he's ginormous and like obviously
Right.
in very good shape, but a lot more injury prone, especially as you get older. And you're right, like he's 31 already. The only problem is I think like the bidding war to get him, you're probably going to have to give him those 8 years. That's just the way it's going to go. But you're
Yeah.
right. I'd be happy for the next 2 to 3 years. After that, I'd be extremely nervous as a fan of whatever team ends up getting him.
Do you think there's any chance the Blue Jays could land Verlander?
I wouldn't call it out of the possibility of realms because they were talking to him. Yeah, it would have just been last off
Yeah.
season, right? Because he only
Yeah.
signed a 1 year in Houston, and I remember hearing rumors that basically like Toronto was one of the top 2, 3 teams in on him. So I mean, if Rogers wants to man up and sort of show, hey, we're in this for real, and you throw him like it's a pretty risk. You're going to have to pay a lot of money, but it'll only be for 1, maybe 2 years. So I wouldn't say it's out of the list of possibilities. And obviously, that would be a ginormous get for them, like huge. So I would love to see it happen, and it would help the team. I'm no kidding.
Have you been following the World Cup?
A little bit. I can't say I'm too much on top of that, but I saw our boys from Canada finished off the trifecta of
Yeah.
losses. So I did see that. Tough one, tough one.
Yeah, not a great result, but for a lot of the pub we sure didn't have a great effort. That's one thing I'll say about Canada. And the
Yeah, there's
US are through, so go fucking figure. But let's Columbus, your team. I want to talk about them for a minute. They had one of the worst injury luck in a week I think I've ever seen. Werenski went down. Blankenberg, a player that I really started to like watching, gets hurt. I near cried. He's like a pet to me. I love him. They lost Corrali in there. Boone Jenner got hurt. I mean, it was half the roster seemingly was hurt. What do you want this team to do the rest of the year?
lose every single game. And the part of me, like, there's a little part of me that hates saying that and hates like watching these games and cheering for them to lose. But with this draft being generational, people are calling it the top three, arguably four guys, if you want to include the Swedish kid, are all absolutely studs. So they need one of them. Columbus historically, they've been so bad at tanking. Like the year they hired Torts, they started that year 0-7, fired Todd Richards, hired Torts. Torts is the worst coach you can hire if you want to tank because he gets somewhat results right away, but obviously, he's not the most sustainable, but and then the one year they did tank, they had the second overall pick. It was Ryan Murray, so that didn't really help
Oof,
things
yeah.
much. But over the history of the organization, the one thing they've never sniffed, is the number one center. They've had good players in the past. Rick Nash, love Rick. The reason I'm a fan, but obviously a winger, and he's not a top guy on a Stanley Cup team, right? Panarin, great guy. I don't know if he's necessarily, we saw him in the playoffs. He didn't play all that well last year with the Rangers. I
Hmm.
don't think he's like the top guy on your team. If you want to win a Stanley Cup, you need that, whether it's McKinnon, even like somebody like Braden Point playing for Tampa. Like Columbus has never had that number one center who just gets it done. So this is the year if you're going to do it. And like you mentioned, the injuries, you almost have like a built-in excuse to just lose all these games. Like you don't have any expectations. Your number one defenseman's out the entire year. So right there, that's a built-in excuse that you can use. I think they're still somewhat fun to watch, I guess, for a team that's tanking can be. Some of the young guys, Kent Johnson's looked somewhat, he's shown flashes of looking good. Johnny Gaudreau, that one's still so weird. It almost still hasn't hit me that he's still on the team, but he's over a point per game, which stinks for a team tanking, but it's fun
Right.
to watch him play like day in and day out. So there's still aspects of the team that are kind of fun to watch, which makes tanking a little more bearable. But in the long run, like they need preferably for me one of the top two guys. Mitch Cobb scares me a little bit just with his contract situation in Russia. So
Hmm.
ideally, Bedard or Fantilli, like I would love nothing more than to see them in Columbus next year.
Yeah, Gaudreau, I'm still not into. Yeah, the Gaudreau thing's weird for me too. Even Laine's been there for a minute. And I'm still kind of like he plays here, but it's just strange. Your goaltending, they're both gone by the start of next year, right?
I don't know how Elvis is gonna be gone though. Like he's not a good goalie, and his contract is terrible. Like
Yeah,
Yarmo deserves more heat than he's really gotten. There's always this sort of cult following in Columbus that like anything Yarmo does, it's like they like to say, "In Yarmo we trust," "In Yarmo we
it's
trust."
kind of
But
like tree living in
yeah,
Calgary.
yeah, exactly. But some of these moves, like he deserves, like Elvis had a decent rookie year when he came over, but not good enough to get. I can't think of what his contract is. Five
He might
times
be. I think he might be making like 4.5, Benny, something like that, maybe.
yeah, but he's been terrible this year, and last year he wasn't much better. So I don't know who the heck would want him. Corpusalo has shown like he just came off surgery and he's looked decent as you can on a team with zero defense. And he's on a 1 year, so I could see you maybe moving him for some team that needs a backup goalie, but I don't know if they'll resign him at the end of the year. But the Elvis contract's just bad, and I don't see any team really wanting to take that on.
So trade Voracek this season, likelihood tanking, get rid of him. Try to trade one of the goaltenders. Any other guys that you look at that could be
I
pieces
think
that you could flip?
I think Nyquist is the other one because he's
Yeah.
also his deal's expiring this year. So I think he could be maybe a decent third line winger on a playoff team. Probably not a top contender, but like he's a solid piece you can add and still contribute offensively. So I'd look at him to probably get moved as well. And sorry, Gavrikov on defense.
Yes.
He's been their best defenseman by far, and I think he's probably pretty underrated in terms of overall like NHL defenseman. Like he's a really solid player. So I would be surprised if Gavrikov's not gone by the end of the year as well.
Yeah, it's a good pull. I'd want him if I'm going on a cup run. He's really
Hmm.
good.
Hmm.
So when Columbus is tanking, you're rooting for them to lose every night. I'm with you all the way there. Try to get a player. Do you pivot to rooting for the Leafs? Do you just watch for fun, hoping for them to collapse? How do you pivot your fandom when something like this is happening?
I don't really cheer for any teams. I more cheer against teams. The Leafs are the weird one. I don't cheer for or against. The Leafs are a fun one where I just I just let the Leafs happen. Like big losses, it's still one of my favorite things just to go to Twitter after and see. Or I love hearing your thoughts and stuff on the Leafs because they're such a polarizing team, right? In every sort of aspect. So uh, I cheer not for or against the Leafs. There's teams I cheer against, like Boston. I'll always hate Boston and Montreal for I don't know why. I just don't not a huge fan. Um, Washington, based on some of those Columbus games and series back when Columbus was decent, I'm not a huge fan of. But there's not really a team that I sort of like adopt and cheer for. I would say I'm more just sort of watch for the fun, the good of the game, you could say.
Do you think the Leafs are playing different this year than they were last year, even though they're winning the same number of games? But are you seeing a difference in the way they're approaching their game?
It's a great question, and I want to say yes. The problem is, I feel like you could ask this question like at some point of the year, like the past 3 years, and I would say, yeah, they look different at different points of each season. Um, but like I'm impressed by them. They have looked decent. They're missing a lot of their defensemen. I think 3 of their top 6 are out, and they're looking
Mhm.
good. The goaltending, Matt Murray and Samsonov have looked real good. And Matthews, I know we're saying like he's not producing all that much, and you look at his stats, he's over a point per game and doing well. But compared to what we've seen from him last year, like he still hasn't been that top guy yet. But they continue to win hockey games and they look good doing it. Problem, like I said, is I think you could make that case the past 2, 3 years, and you can look at certain points of the year and say they've looked good as well. And it Toronto, you can talk about them as much as you want. At this point, it's what are they going to do in late April and early May. So
What's the best Toronto sports podcast or show?
best. Oh, I love Overdrive with Jeff, or is it Hayes? Hazy, I don't even know. It's for Brian Hayes and Jeff
Yeah.
O'Neill and Jamie McClellan. I like Overdrive. That would probably be my favorite Toronto
Yeah,
one.
I agree. I listen to that one too. I think they do a good job. Tim and Squid or Tim and Sid, whatever it is. I'm not a big fan of that
I,
one, but
yeah, I haven't listened since Sid. I'll give him credit. Like he does have a bit of polarizing where you sort of want to hear his
yeah.
opinion just to hear what he says. Because even though half the time you disagree and want to yell at him, but you still want to get that opinion from him. But once he left, yeah, I haven't watched much at all. And it's not like I think Tim McCall, like I think he's a good guy, but yeah, I lost a little interest in the old Tim and Friends or whatever they call it these days.
Yeah. Um, if you had to make a prediction on who's going to win the cup today, who would you pick?
For me, I would still lean Colorado. I think they're still just the most complete team. Georgiev's looked all right, pretty good in that
Mhm.
so far, but you still got horses everywhere, right? The McKinnon, obviously Makar. I still lean towards the best defenseman in the league. And we forget Landeskog hasn't played at all this year, right?
Yeah.
And I think he's still expected. I know his timeline was delayed a little bit from the injury, but he'll still be back before the end of the year. And then, I mean, that's a huge acquisition you're getting midway through the season right there. So I think I think they're still the top dog. I know some of the teams look awesome, like the New Jersey, right? Like,
Yeah.
holy, what a start they've had. In Boston, same sort of thing. But I still lean towards Colorado just with the horses that they have, and they've shown obviously last year that they can get it done when it matters. So I lean them.
You heard before the year all these polls and different people that McDavid still looked at as the best player, and Matthews was primarily put number two, which I didn't agree with. But anyway, that was the general consensus. I'm starting to think, Benny, that it's Cale Makar. I watch him he is unbelievable how good he is. And he does something every night I've never seen. And he rarely ever makes a mistake. To me, he's elevating himself into that, second best player in the world type conversation.
I agree. And I think as a defenseman too, there's certain ways that you can
Mm.
control a game sort of different than like a forward, center, winger can do. And you're right, just the way he plays, mistake free, the way you put it is so true. Like the guy just does every little thing right. And then he also does extraordinary things like almost on a nightly basis where you're like, holy, how did you just do that? The way he works his edges and just like he does everything so well that he's a so much fun to watch. And you're right. Just I wouldn't be surprised if more people start talking about him as the best, second best player in the game
Mhm.
sooner rather than later because he's a beast.
As we transition back to football, I have some news for you here. The Bills placed linebacker Von Miller on injury reserve following his knee injury. So he's out tonight against your Patriots. He's out for the next couple weeks. Might miss the rest of the regular season. Your Patriots got the Bills tonight at home. 6-5, your Pats, virtually a must-win for them if they want to, keep in tight with the Chargers, with the Dolphins, everybody in the AFC East. What have you made of your Patriots so far this season?
They're just meh. Meh is the best way to describe them. It's a bit painful, a lot of Jekyll high, especially with that defense. The offense just looks sort of miserable at all the times. But like you said, I do think tonight is a must win. I think that they have to beat the Bills. They have to split with the Bills. And tonight's obviously the better chance to do that. You're playing at home. I think in order to make the playoffs, they probably have to win 4 of their last 6 games. So they have to play Buffalo twice, Miami. I
Yeah.
think it's the Raiders. I want to say in Cardinals. So I and Cincinnati, I think, is in there. But I think they have to beat the Bills one of those games. And tonight at home, like you said, Von Miller is out. Um, Josh Allen, see his elbow. I mean, you see some of the throws he's still making. It doesn't really look like it's hurting that much.
Right.
But the Bills we've seen, like they're beatable. Detroit, I thought, got a little unlucky and maybe even deserved to win that game last week. So we're catching the Bills at a good time. The problem is just the Pats. Their offensive line's depleted. They're missing a couple guys. The defense is what defense is going to show up. They were awful last week against Minnesota, but then the week before, it's like how much of that was the defense and how much of that was Zach Wilson just being absolutely terrible. It's tough to
Right.
say. But we've seen the defense look dominant in games prior to that too. So it's what defense is going to show up. I think they got to create at least one turnover at some point, make Buffalo punt it. I think tonight's a bit of a pride game for New England too. After the playoffs, where Buffalo absolutely
Right.
stomped them, and this is their first time playing them since that. So I think it's a bit of a pride game too. So um, I think it might determine the rest of the season. And if they make the playoffs, I think it could very well be determined by the outcome of the game tonight.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. They're a frustrating team because they got guys calling offensive plays or special teams and defensive coordinators, which
Yeah.
never made sense to me. And that Jet game was one of the most frustrating games probably to watch. I'm sure it was for you as a Patriots fan. Frustrated me because I had Jets plus 3.5, and that stupid punt return for a touchdown fucked me over. But that was the main frustration. But we saw last week Mac Jones threw a good deep ball. He took some shots, and yes, that Vikings defense was piss poor, but they got receivers that can go down the field. Nelson Aguilar can run a deep route like a Deshaun Jackson would, Don't throw the ball to Devontae Parker in the red zone. We've learned that, but Hunter Henry is athletic enough as a tight end. You got Ramondre is great as a pass catcher or in the run game. I think he's their best offensive player, quite frankly. Let Mac cook, if you will, a little more than just check down every play. I liked what I saw last week from their offense. Their defense, I think, will play better tonight in a cold situation. It's not a dome, so there's more elements there. But don't go back to the old playbook tonight just because you're afraid Mac's noodle arm can't get the ball down the field in cold weather.
I couldn't agree more. You got to let that leash off. And we finally saw it, like you mentioned last week. They finally let him do some fun things and throw the ball downfield. So many times in earlier games this year, it's like running on first down, running on
Mhm.
second down. And then you're not helping your QB out at all by doing that. Suddenly he's in 3rd and 8 every passing down. The defense knows he's going to pass, and you're just hanging him out to dry there. So just do some play action early, take some shots down deep. I couldn't agree more because I don't think like you're gonna win doing it the old-fashioned Matt Patricia aerospace engineering where, however he likes to do it.
Yeah.
Um, but I even think Mac, the Jets game, I know like was terrible, but I don't think he was that bad. Some of that was again just the play calling, and the
Mhm.
red zone offense has been a big issue the entire year. They just can't finish off drives a lot of the time. So I think that'll be big tonight, especially against a Buffalo team that they're going to put up some points. So you're going to have to put up a couple touchdowns if you get into the red zone.
And you got, yeah, like you said, you got to hope Josh Allen makes a few mistakes. He's been turning the ball over more than any quarterback in the NFL over the last month. So it's cold. You got Matthew Judon's had a great season for your Patriots. Rushing the quarterback. So we'll see what happens tonight. Do you think the Patriots cover the number?
Is it 3.5? I
I
feel
believe so. Yeah.
I think Buffalo wins the game. I obviously hope New England wins. I would love to see it. This almost feels like if I was a betting man, almost like a stay away. I don't even know because at home in New England, 3.5. Buffalo is just screams like they're still the better team to me. So I don't know. It's tough. But I'm rooting for a
Are,
New England win.
are the Dolphins better than the Bills?
It's a great question. That offense is so fun to watch. I mean, they're absolutely dynamic, and we're seeing Tua can still sling it. So they play again, do they not? They still have
Yeah,
another
they
game.
do. So the Dolphins are in San Francisco this weekend, which is a great game, Sunday afternoon. Then they're at the Chargers, Sunday Night Football, that just got flexed, and then they got at the Bills. So 3 straight road games for the Dolphins: Niners, Chargers, and Bills. Tough schedule.
Yeah, this is part of why I'm so bad at this, like the podcast hot takes game. I'm just too indecisive. I'm just like, I'll let you know in 3 weeks after the Bills and Dolphins play who's the better team. I don't know, but Miami, like they're fun. And Mike McDaniel, I can't get enough of that guy. Like if your team's losing, I could see him maybe wearing and getting old a little bit, but he is so entertaining and just fun to watch. And you can tell the players like Tua absolutely loves them, which
Yeah.
is just awesome to see. You want your franchise quarterback liking your coach, which I think was part of the problem with Brian Flores, their last coach. So uh, Dolphins are fun, if anything.
I forgot to ask you this one about the Patriots. Are you starting to lose faith in Bill Belichick?
Yeah, it's just tough not to the way that the season has gone. And you mentioned already the who we have playing calls or calling plays on offense. Like why? I know you've had them on the staff in the past, but in different roles. Now they're suddenly running our offense. Like just a lot of the decision making is becoming a bit bizarre, and sort of how some of that Zappy Mac Jones fiasco went
Mhm.
down towards the beginning of the year. I thought some of that was played out maybe a little differently than it should have probably gone. So, I mean, we'll love Bill forever. He'll forever be the best coach of all time. Um, but it's tough not to say, hey, maybe this guy's getting older and he's losing it a little bit with some of the decisions that we've seen made this year. It's just those thoughts creep in your head, whether you want them to or not, for sure.
Right. Fair enough, for sure. Yeah, I understand that. Let's get to a little game that I like to call in or out. And we're going to go through these teams I have on my list. We're going to say if either the coach or the quarterback will be in or out at the start of next season. It's pretty simple. Will they be back, fired, or will they be traded? Things of that nature. Let's start with this fascinating team that you should never want to watch and never want to bet. Well, bet against them, because you'll probably win. The Denver Broncos. So Nathaniel Hackett, head coach, Russell Wilson, quarterback. How do you see that going this
oh,
offseason?
oh, that's disgusting. They both should be gone. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't think you can easily. Well, I don't know. NFL contracts will never make sense to me. Can they just get rid of Russ? But you've invested so much in that trade that I don't think you can sort of sell to a fan base and just get rid of him after the season, even though he's terrible. That trade at the
Mhm.
time I thought was a bit bizarre. Like he hasn't been a great quarterback in a while. Like
Yep.
It's been a while. So that trade at the time didn't make a whole lot of sense. I think Denver thought maybe overestimated the rest of their roster at the time too, and thought it was maybe a bit better than they actually are. Um, it's an ideal world. I'd have Russ gone. I don't think that happens. But I think with the expectations and everything coming into this year, I don't see. I know again, Nathaniel Hackett, it's his first year, but it couldn't have gone much worse at all, especially with the expectations coming into the year. So I would not be shocked if he's gone by next year.
Yeah, I think he's fired for sure, and they'll bring in a new coach that is an offensive genius and can fix Russ, and they'll have to sell that because he's got so much money left, and there's really no trade to get them out of it. So they'll have, but Nathaniel Hackett certainly will be gone. Las Vegas Raiders.
Again, it's another case of like it's sort of tough to. Well, they've already said they're not getting rid of Josh McDaniels, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I guess he's back. Should he be back? Probably not. He's like, I love the guy. Obviously, he's done a lot of good stuff in New England, but for whatever reason, him as a head coach just does not work out. Then Derek Carr, like I think at this point, it's time to move on. Like you had your chances. You've had some good teams. You've had some bad teams, but at this point, I think Derek Carr, unfortunately, like he seems like a genuine good guy to root for, but at this point, he sort of just is what he is, and I don't think he's a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. You got him a huge weapon in Devontae in the offseason. You thought that was gonna work wonders, and I mean, look where they are. They're a bad football team. So, an ideal world again is sort of similar to Denver. I think you would love for both of them to be gone, but it's a bit easier to say than it is to do, especially if there's like money problems or something. They can't get rid of McDaniels.
Yeah.
That's obviously not ideal.
Yeah, so with Carr, if they bring him back after this season, he'll have 3 years left on his deal. They have an opt-out clause this offseason if they want to cut bait with Derek Carr. I think they'll do that because 3 years is a lot. As you I think it'd be a good thing for him to get a refresh too. Like I don't think he's a bad quarterback. Go somewhere else, see if he can turn it around. I'm sure the Colts will be looking for another veteran quarterback to try out to see if they could finally get one to stick. But you know, I think McDaniels will be back, but he's been a big disappointment, that's for sure. I didn't expect them to be this. I expected them to be better than the Raiders, but not by a half game. You know, better than the Broncos, sorry, but not by a half game. Colts.
Oh, oh, definitely a new quarterback. Like that seems like a pretty big given at this point. I mean, they had Sam Ellinger starting games for them. So, and Jeff Saturday, that was so bizarre. That seemed just more like I have no idea what to do. So let's bring in a former player. Like that made
Right.
no sense from the start. So I think I'd be surprised if they retain him as a coach. I think they go and get somebody with some coaching experience, like any at all. Some of his, like I saw clips of him from the game. I think it was the past Sunday where they're in a crucial like time at the end of the game, and he's just like a blank stare on his face, and he's not saying anything into his microphone. It's like you should probably be communicating to whether it's your quarterback or the coaches upstairs, like have a plan, say something, and he just looked like a blank, like a deer in the headlights type thing. So I don't think it's necessarily his fault. Like he was thrown into a pretty tough situation, but I think it's best for the Colts if they sort of do a refresh, new quarterback, and bring in a coach with a little more experience than Jeff Saturday.
Yeah, I think you're dead on the money with that analysis. I think Matt Ryan's gone 100%. For some reason, I think they're going to bring Jeff Saturday back. I think
Jim
Jim
Irsay
Irsay
love
thinks
him.
he loves him so much. And the way he brought him in, he goes like, yeah, Jeff's here to stay kind of thing. It wasn't like it was a short deal. Like he's like, hey, you know, we think this guy can coach some football. And if Jeff Saturday said in his intro, hey, I know how to lead men, bro. And, you know, I think the Colts aren't going to be good next year either because they'll probably try to draft a quarterback. But again, Matt Ryan's career is likely done after this season. He had a good run.
Mhm.
Your Patriots killed him. He never was the same after, and that Super Bowl kind of ruined his career. Green Bay Packers.
It's a weird one. It's a weird one. I think I saw, was it earlier just today, that Aaron Rodgers said he'd be open to the idea of sitting if presented with or approached with that offer. Jordan Love came into the game the other day. Looked all right. Looked a little nice. So at some point, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, as he passes prime, I wouldn't be surprised if he has a couple more years of decent football in him, if that's in Green Bay or elsewhere. Um, it just feels like that relationship it's been rocky for what feels like 5 years now, but I think at some point it's sort of just got to come to a halt, and I think it would be best for them to move on. For Aaron Rodgers, your team's not good. You may as well see what you got in Jordan Love, because the longer you delay what you got in Jordan Love, the longer you delay the next quarterback search or whatever. So I think it would be best if they cut ties with Aaron Rodgers. Will they? It's a tough decision to make, obviously, for a guy that's meant so much to your franchise. But I think that would be best. And Matt LaFleur is sort of, it's it's tough. Like, I don't know.
I don't think he deserves to be fired, Benny, but I could see him being fired.
Yeah, just for, yeah, depending what all those owners up in Green Bay, all millions of them or whatever it is, what they think. But yeah, no, I get what you mean there, because I don't think he's been dealt necessarily a great hand. And we've seen that he's a good coach in the past. And I think, like, if he's fired, I think he's automatically top of the list in terms of free agent coaches. So I think I kind of agree with you. It might be a mistake to fire him, but I wouldn't be shocked if it did happen.
I kind of think Aaron might retire.
I could see that. Go
He
live in the
give up
forest.
50 million, but I mean, he loves ayahuasca and he likes other stuff more than I think he likes money. So 50 million is hard to pass up. I mean, if he comes back, they can't cut him because it's going to be over 50 million in dead cap. So you have to keep. They'd almost have to trade Jordan Love, Benny, because how long is he going to sit? This is his third year behind Rodgers. Rodgers sat 3 years behind Favre before he began to start. So it's a weird. If you're Jordan Love, you're like, okay, like when is it my
Yeah,
time?
yeah,
When can I get a sniff somewhere? Because after next year, they'll have to decide to pick up his 5th-year option. And he started one game in his career and he's played some backup duty. Like they don't know what they have in him.
yeah. You have no idea, but yeah, you mentioned Aaron Rodgers' retirement. It wouldn't be shocking, especially with some of the comments he made earlier, like today, being open to the idea of sitting if approached about it. And yeah, like you said, like, that guy, he loves other stuff way more than he loves football. I don't think he has that burning passion that you see in a lot of quarterbacks these days. I think he's much more content wherever that may be, in a forest somewhere, like you mentioned, just smoking whatever it is that
Right.
they present. So he seems like the guy that would be pretty content on moving on and getting into other possibilities, hosting Jeopardy maybe or whatever.
Yeah. Him and Joe Rogan start a podcast together, maybe. I don't know.
Medical experts.
Yeah. Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, Brady's coming back to New England. Didn't you see that
I did
rumor
see that
floating
report.
around?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not on board with that one, but I think, yeah, Todd Bowles has been bad, and I don't think the players like him all that much. He's done some weird sort of things, and the Brady, God, I love Tom so much, but it's just getting like harder and harder to like defend. Like, oh, he's a great quarterback still. Like, all the family mental stuff, I'm sure, took a toll on him, but he's finally, it took a long, long time, but he's
Mhm.
finally sort of showing that maybe, like, he's sort of on the near end of his career, whether he wants to or not. Because it's weird. I still feel like that team's good. Like I look at the defense, I'm like, oh, they'll finally figure it out. They'll finally figure it out. And for whatever reason, it just hasn't clicked this year. And they still have like weapons on offense. So it's weird because on paper, I still look at them like they're a decent team. And maybe that sort of goes back to Todd Bowles and the job he's done coaching. But um, I think they should move on from both, but again, whether they do, who knows?
Yeah, I don't think Brady's back for sure. Maybe he retires. Maybe he's Trey Lance's safety valve in San Francisco next year. I don't know with his injury, that could be something. I think he should retire. He's not playing well this year. He's talked about all the bad football on the field. He's said that a lot. I think he's watching his own tape because he's been pretty bad this season. But I agree with you on Todd Bowles. His decision making, his timeouts, it makes no sense half the time. Tampa looks old too. Like Mike
Yeah.
Evans looks just kind of beat up a lot. Chris Godwin hasn't looked the same since his knee injury. So they played a lot of football together, and they're showing their wear and tear this season. Wouldn't shock me if both are gone. I think Brady's more of a lock than Bowles, just because Bowles is in his first season as head coach. They might give him another year. New Orleans.
Man. Again, with the quarterback situation there, whether it's Dalton or Jameis or whoever the heck they got back there on any given week, I think, yeah, I would expect them to draft the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope. And whether you want to start him year one or you want to have him sit behind, but that'd be so painful as a fan in New Orleans, like
You want to
having
know the sad thing, though, Benny? They traded their first-round pick to the Eagles.
oh, I forgot about that. That's going to be a good pick too. So you're right; they're not even going to get a shot at one of the premier guys. So,
Mm-hmm.
oh, who's the free agent market this year? Not that,
Brady.
yeah. Well, I can't see that happening though. That's a mess. That's a messier situation than I kind of realized until I started just thinking about it. And you reminded me there; they don't even have a first round pick. So I they need to move on, but
Uh,
like there's nothing like
Cooper Rush.
yeah, he won some ball games. Hey, he won ball games, found a way, good game
Yeah.
manager, but still as an entertainment standpoint for like an outsider fan, I would love to see Jameis just keep slinging it back there because he's fun to watch, whether he's tossing dimes or tossing 50 interceptions. You're gonna get a lot of both. So he's fun to watch. But I mean, he lost his job pretty much to Andy Dalton, so that says a lot about him too. So that's a messy situation.
I think they'll be bad again. I could see them re-signing Dalton and just start him, like you said. Maybe they draft a quarterback in the third round or something. We saw Atlanta did that with Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati. He obviously hasn't played yet, but they have him hopefully as their quarterback of the future. Malik Willis is in Tennessee behind Ryan Tannehill. So maybe it's a Will Levis from Kentucky.
Mhm.
He's a quarterback that has some promise. He will be a later rounds type guy. You're obviously not going to get Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, but I do think there'll be some quarterbacks available that could bring some value to your team for sure. Uh,
Is Dennis Allen? Is that their coach? How
yeah,
long's he been there? He's just one of those coaches you don't even like really
he was the
know much
DC
about him.
for 4 years, and now he's the head coach now.
Is this his first year? I'm not even.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is his first year. Okay, so yeah, it hasn't gone
no,
great.
it
But I mean,
hasn't gone well.
he
No,
also yeah wasn't dealt the best situation. At least I guess you can say too.
and we'll close it out with this team, New England.
I you gotta in Bill we trust, man. I can't turn on him. All the good moments that he's given me in my life, I just can't turn my back on him, even if there's like a small little creep of doubt, like I already mentioned, that is maybe aging a little bit this year and starting to show that. But he'll be our guy forever, and we can never turn our backs on old Bill. So and Mac, I'm last couple weeks, like he keeps showing you like glimpses, like maybe,
Yeah.
maybe. And the problem like these days is like who are you gonna get that's better than Mac, right?
Yeah.
Especially like a young guy. You can draft some guy third, fourth round. They did that last year with Zappy. I just think it's so tough to find good quarterbacks these days that you gotta ride with your young guy that has shown glimpses. And don't get me wrong, I don't consider him that guy quite yet, but I'm not completely ruling it out. And maybe I'm just being a little naive there and in my bias, but I think you ride it out with Mac again next year, and Bill, I'll always he has a lifetime contract in New England, so I'm fine.
Wow. Lifetime
Yeah.
contract.
You
Yeah.
win us that many Super Bowls, you can do what we want. But I was thinking earlier, like this is the worst time maybe in my life as like a sports fan because all my teams just stink. I guess the Jays are all right, but like the way that season ended, they
Yeah.
stink too. But
That was tough.
like I could always fall back on New England growing up. I was always pencil them in for at least an AFC championship. Now I can't even do that anymore. It's sad, but what can you do? It's the way it goes.
You had a good run.
I
You
did.
had
New
you
England
you
gave
were
me a
good.
good
You were
run.
good. You were that kid with the sign that said, "This is my ninth parade, and I'm 10 years old." So I think you were doing okay.
I don't know about that. I only had 5, so but yeah, that kid.
Okay. Well,
Only 5, I say as if that's like nothing, but yeah, yeah. I've had it better than
the
most
Blue
people.
Jackets haven't been that kind to you.
No, no, that's always like, yeah, I'm a New England fan, but I also root for the Blue Jackets, so evens it out a tiny bit, I guess.
Yeah, you gotta keep yourself grounded.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
exactly. You're welcome,
What's
people.
what's on the horizon for you, work wise or personal? Anything you got coming up before Christmas?
Nothing too big. I'm heading down to Fort Lauderdale in a couple weeks, so I'm checking out. I have a week off work, and I googled. I'm like, "Where's Columbus playing that week?" Lucky for me, they're playing the Florida Panthers. So, you want to
Nice.
talk about cheap tickets? Trust me, you're not going to find any cheaper tickets or easier tickets to find than a Florida Panthers Columbus Blue Jackets game. So, I'll be in attendance for that one. Looking forward to that.
Nice. Yeah, I'm going down there too, the week of Christmas with the
Oh, nice.
family, seeing Florida and New Jersey. Oddly enough, a decent game, and
Yeah, that turned into a decent game. Yeah, for sure.
got tickets to the Green Bay Miami game on Christmas Day.
Unreal. That'll be
Yeah,
awesome. That'll be awesome. There's a lot. Yeah, I forgot Christmas is a Sunday, and there's a lot of good Christmas Eve games too. Like I was looking at the
the
schedule
whole
earlier.
day.
It's
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
Dallas, Philly Christmas Eve. That'll be a nice one, especially yeah, for you to enjoy that down in the warm weather. But that'll be awesome. Awesome to see a
no,
game in Miami too.
I'm looking forward to it. Never been to an NFL game, so that's number one on my bucket list. So looking forward to scratching that off. But always good to talk to you, Benny. Thanks for making the time today, man. And happy holidays and Merry Christmas.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Jug. Merry Christmas.
Ben Murray, everybody. Always great to talk to him. It's been a minute since he came on the show, but he's always got great insight. Big sports fan, and it's always a fun conversation. Tomorrow on TTP, we'll break down tonight's games in the National Hockey League. A bunch of different games that I like tonight. Golden Knights and Penguins. Chris Letang suffered a second stroke of his life. He's 34 years old the other day. Tough scene. Really hope he can play again, but more importantly, I hope his health is okay. Playing his secondary, he's had a great career. Fringe Hall of Famer. Not for me, but very good career. 3 Stanley Cups. Awesome player. Do what's best for your health, Chris. Calvin Peterson was put on waivers by LA yesterday. 3 years, $15 million extension in the offseason. Now he's in the minors playing for the Ontario Reign. Yikes. Golden Knight Pens tonight. Oilers are in Minnesota on a back-to-back. They're looking for a win. Flames, Canadians. Actually, an interesting game for me tonight is that game. The Flames beat Florida the other night in an interesting game. Kachuk's return. Huberdeau scored a goal. His 4th of the season. He still isn't playing well, but I saw signs from the Flames. I want to see what they continue to do. on a regular basis. Also want to talk about the Winnipeg Jets tomorrow. They are impressive. I watched their entire game against the Colorado Avalanche the other night, and they are a well-oiled machine, but they need to add depth. Their bottom six is weak. They're out with injuries right now. They're going to need another piece, but through 2 months, they are an impressive team. Rick Bowness, hell of a job. I shouldn't be surprised. Just didn't know if he'll be able to get back on the bench with his health issues, but they're Wheeler's playing awesome. Scheifele's playing like a superstar. Kyle Connor, Pionk, and Morrissey are a two-headed monster. And Connor Hellebuck's been, you could argue, the best goaltender in the NHL so far this season. We'll also do Big Money Friday tomorrow. Every NFL game, we'll go through the lines. We'll go through the props. We'll talk about all that, college football, and anything else you need to be prepared for heading into the weekend. Before we wrap today, Japan beat España. Japan secured top spot in Group E. They beat Spain 2-1, while the Spanish advanced to the knockout stage thanks to holding the tiebreaker over Germany. So Germany, a top 10 ranked team, and Belgium, a top 5 ranked team, both out of here in the World Cup. Japan, who Canada beat in the pre-tournament game, is through to the knockout round, winning their group. Hell of an effort by Japan. España also advances. Interesting. A lot of upsets. Still a lot of crazy things happen. The final group, the knockout stage, the normal rounds end tomorrow. Brazil is in action tomorrow. Portugal is in action tomorrow. And then Saturday, the knockout round begins. The United States play Saturday morning at 11, I believe, against the Dutch, against the Netherlands. So we'll talk about that tomorrow as well. Hope you enjoyed the show today. I know I did. Great talking to all of you. Great talking to Ben Murray. Thank you for joining me, Benny. We'll talk to you tomorrow. It's Friday already. Here's to the point.